Businessman loses translator at crucial event, but the cook's granddaughter shines on stage. Richard Collins paced nervously through the halls of the Plaza Grand Hotel, checking his watch every passing minute. His tech company was on the brink of bankruptcy, and this presentation to Japanese investors was his last chance to secure the $50 million needed to save 2,000 jobs. Just then, his assistant came running, his face pale with desperation. The official translator had vanished without a trace, leaving only a note saying he couldn't attend for personal reasons. Richard felt his world crumbling. How would he explain to the executives of the Nakamura Corporation that he couldn't communicate with them properly? "Mr. Collins," a soft voice interrupted him. He turned and saw a young black woman around 23, her curly hair tied in a simple ponytail, wearing the hotel's beige staff uniform. She carried a tray of coffee, but her eyes held an intelligence that contrasted with the simplicity of her position. "Sorry to bother you, but I overheard about the translator issue," she said, lowering her voice. "I might be able to help. I speak Japanese fluently." Richard studied her skeptically. How could this young woman, clearly from humble beginnings, master such a complex language? But desperation outweighed prejudice. "Are you sure? This is a $50 million presentation. I can't risk misunderstandings." "I understand perfectly, sir. I studied Japanese for 6 years and lived in Tokyo for a while. I can give you a quick demonstration if you'd like." She began speaking Japanese with impressive fluency, effortlessly explaining complex business concepts. Richard was stunned. Could she really be his salvation? "What's your name?" "Jasmine Washington, sir. I work in the hotel's events department, but today I'm helping with coffee because they're short-staffed." 10 minutes later, Richard entered the main hall with Jasmine by his side. The hotel's luxurious setting contrasted sharply with her simplicity, but Richard had no choice. The 5 Japanese executives were already seated at the head table, reviewing documents and conversing in their native language. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now back to the story. The delegation leader, Takashi Nakamura, a man in his 60s with graying hair and thin-framed glasses, looked up as Richard approached. His expression showed surprise at seeing Jasmine, but he maintained the characteristic politeness of the Japanese. "Gentlemen, this is Jasmine Washington, our translator for today," Richard announced, trying to sound confident. Jasmine bowed respectfully and introduced herself in flawless Japanese. The executives exchanged surprised glances. They hadn't expected someone so young, let alone a black American woman, to speak their language with such precision. Richard began his presentation, and Jasmine translated simultaneously. But it soon became clear she wasn't just translating, she was enhancing his speech. When Richard mentioned operational efficiency, she explained the concept using terms that resonated better with Japanese business sensibilities. When he spoke of strategic partnerships, she framed it within their corporate culture. The investors began taking extensive notes, not just on the numbers, but on Jasmine's insights. Takashi Nakamura, in particular, watched her with growing interest. During a 15-minute break, Richard pulled Jasmine aside. "How did you learn all this? You're not just translating, you're interpreting and culturally adapting my presentation." Jasmine lowered her eyes, hesitant to reveal too much about herself. I have a degree in international relations from Georgetown University. I studied abroad in Japan for 2 years. I also have a specialization in international business." "So why are you working as a hotel employee?" Her face stiffened slightly, an old pain flashing in her eyes. "My grandmother is sick. She raised me after my parents passed away. The salary here lets me pay for her medical treatment and still help with household expenses. Jobs in my field required constant travel, and I couldn't leave her." Richard felt a weight in his chest. Here was a brilliant woman, wasting her talent out of love for her family, while he had never even noticed her presence in the hotel corridors. The presentation resumed, and Jasmine continued her flawless work. She answered technical questions directly in Japanese when the executives addressed her, showing deep knowledge of Asian markets and business protocols. That's when Michael Jennings, Richard's minority partner, approached the stage with a worried expression. "Richard, we need to talk now. Can't it wait? We're in the middle of the company's most important presentation." "That's exactly what I need to talk about." Richard paused, apologizing to the investors. Jasmine took the opportunity to chat informally with them, keeping the mood light while explaining cultural points about the United States that might interest them. Michael pulled Richard aside, his expression tense. "Something strange is going on. The original translator, Stephen, didn't disappear on his own. He was persuaded not to show up." "Persuaded by who?" "By someone who doesn't want this deal to go through. Someone inside the company." A chill ran down Richard's spine. Internal betrayal was the last thing he needed right now. "Are you sure about this?" "Stephen called me an hour ago. He's hiding at home, scared. Said he was threatened by a man who knew intimate details of our negotiations. Details only we knew." Returning to the hall, Richard tried to keep his composure, but his mind raced with doubts. Who in the company would want to sabotage the deal? And why? Jasmine continued her masterful translation, but during an explanation about cash flow, she stopped abruptly. She flipped through some presentation documents with a worried frown. "Mr. Collins," she said quietly in English, "there are inconsistencies in the numbers here. The values in dollars don't match the conversion to yen being presented." Richard quickly checked the papers. She was right. Someone had altered the figures, inflating the projected profits by almost 20%. Impossible. These documents were prepared by our finance team and reviewed by me personally. "Should I explain to the investors that there was a technical error and we'll review the numbers?" Jasmine suggested, already thinking of how to handle the situation without causing embarrassment. But Richard was starting to connect the dots. The threats to the translator, the altered numbers, Michael's insistence on talking during the presentation. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing, Takashi Nakamura stood up and spoke directly to Jasmine in Japanese. She replied naturally, and the two conversed for a few minutes while Richard tried to figure out what was happening. "What did he say?" Richard asked, as soon as Nakamura sat back down. "He wanted to know about my education and experience. He also asked if I'd noticed the inconsistencies in the financial documents. Apparently, they also noticed the mistakes. And what did you say?" "The truth. That I have a degree in international relations, that I studied in Japan, and that yes, I had detected issues with the numbers." He was impressed by my honesty. Richard observed the investors whispering among themselves. He couldn't tell if this was good or bad for his chances. Suddenly, the door to the hall burst open. Stephen, the original translator, stumbled in, clearly drunk and visibly agitated. "Richard," he shouted, pointing toward the businessman, "you need to know the truth about what's happening here." The hotel security quickly moved toward Stephen, but he kept yelling. "They paid me not to come today. They wanted to sabotage your presentation. But I changed my mind. I came to tell you everything." Silence fell over the room. The Japanese investors watched the scene with impassive expressions, but Richard could see the disapproval in their eyes. Jasmine quickly explained the situation in Japanese, trying to minimize the embarrassment. Michael appeared out of nowhere and tried to calm Stephen down, but the translator shoved him. "It was you. You're the one who paid me not to come. $50,000 to disappear for a day." Everyone in the room turned to Michael, who turned red. Richard felt as if he'd been punched in the gut. "Michael, is this true?" His partner tried to deny it, but Stephen continued his drunken, rambling speech. He said the company would be sold anyway, but he wanted to make sure it went to the right group, that the Japanese wouldn't understand our market. Richard stepped toward Michael, anger boiling in his veins. "You betrayed our 15-year partnership, destroyed the trust of 2,000 families who depend on this company?" "It's not like that, Richard. I have a better offer, an American group that—" "Did you alter the numbers in the presentation too?" Michael fell silent and Richard had his answer. Jasmine stepped between them, keeping her voice low. "Gentlemen, the investors are waiting for an explanation. May I suggest we continue the presentation with the correct numbers? They seem to value honesty when I mentioned the errors earlier." Richard took a deep breath. Here was a 23-year-old woman teaching him about integrity in business while his own partner betrayed him. Do it, Jasmine. Explain the whole situation to them with complete transparency. She returned to the microphone and in fluent Japanese explained that she had uncovered irregularities in the documents, that the original translator had been bribed not to attend, and that the businessman himself was just discovering the betrayal. She emphasized that Richard had chosen full transparency rather than trying to cover up the problems. The investors listened in silence. Takashi Nakamura asked a few direct questions about the company's true financial situation, and Jasmine faithfully translated every word. Then an elderly woman entered the hall, clearly worried. Jasmine saw her, and her face lit up with affection, but also concern. "Grandma, what are you doing here?" The woman, about 70 years old, with grey hair tied in a simple bun and wearing a hotel kitchen apron, approached Jasmine. "My dear, you disappeared from the kitchen and no one knew where you were. Mrs. Jenkins was worried and asked me to look for you." Richard watched the scene, and something clicked in his memory. That face, those kind eyes. Where had he seen that woman before? "Mrs. Dorothy?" he said, almost whispering. The elderly woman turned and looked at him carefully, her eyes gradually widening. "Richard? Little Richie Collins?" The entire room fell silent as Richard approached Jasmine's grandmother. "My God, Mrs. Dorothy, you saved my mother over 20 years ago." Jasmine looked between them, confused. "Grandma, how did you two meet?" Mrs. Dorothy smiled, her eyes glistening with tears of emotion. "My dear, I was a nurse at Mercy Medical Center when this young man's mother arrived there in critical condition. It was early morning, she was alone, and the doctors said there was nothing more they could do. But I didn't give up. I stayed with her all night, monitoring her, administering medication, holding her hand. In the end, she recovered." Richard felt a lump in his throat. "My mother always spoke of an angel nurse who saved her that night, who stayed by her side when everyone else had given up. She searched for you for years to thank you, but you had changed jobs. I had to leave nursing when my daughter passed away and I needed to care for Jasmine. She was just a baby with no one else in the world." The Japanese investors followed the conversation through Jasmine's simultaneous translation, struggling to maintain her professional composure while discovering such an unexpected connection between her family and Richard. Takashi Nakamura stood up and addressed Jasmine in Japanese. His expression was serious, almost solemn. "What did he say?" Richard asked. Jasmine hesitated before translating, clearly surprised by the executive's words. He said, "They were very impressed with my integrity and competence, that his company is interested in hiring me as a consultant for their operations in the United States, and that their investment proposal for your company is contingent on my participation as Director of International Relations." Richard was stunned. The investors wanted Jasmine, not necessarily him. "But that's impossible," Jasmine said quickly. "I can't abandon my grandmother. I can't leave the hotel. I have responsibilities." Mrs. Dorothy gently touched her granddaughter's arm. "My dear, do you think I haven't noticed how much you've sacrificed your dreams for my sake? Do you think I haven't seen the sadness in your eyes every time an opportunity passed by? Grandma, you're more important than any job. And you're more important than any fear I might have. I'm already better. The treatment is working. It's time for you to fly, my dear." Richard watched the scene, his wounded pride battling his growing admiration for Jasmine. She had saved his presentation, uncovered his partner's betrayal, and now the investors wanted her more than him. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. Takashi Nakamura spoke again, this time addressing both Jasmine and Richard. His words were measured, respectful, but firm. "He's proposing a partnership," Jasmine translated. "Their company will invest the 50 million, but they want changes in the structure. They want me to be the cultural bridge between the companies, working directly with you, but with autonomy to develop strategies for the Asian market." Richard swallowed his pride. Hundreds of families depended on that decision. "What about Michael?" Jasmine asked the question in Japanese and translated the response. They want him completely removed from the company. They don't do business with people who've shown dishonesty. Michael, who had remained silent throughout the revelation, played his last card. Richard, you're going to trust an inexperienced girl over me? Someone who didn't even finish college? Jasmine turned to him, her voice calm but firm. Actually, Mr. Jennings, I graduated with honors in international relations and have a specialization in international business from the Wharton School of Business. I'm also fluent in Japanese, English, Spanish, and French. The difference between us is that I've never lied about my qualifications or betrayed anyone's trust. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael left the room without another word, knowing his career at the company had come to an end. Takashi Nakamura turned to Jasmine again, his expression now warmer. She translated as he spoke. Mr. Nakamura is asking about my experience in Japan. He wants to know where I studied and who I worked with there. And what was your experience? Jasmine hesitated for a moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. I was a scholarship student at Keio University in Tokyo. I worked for 6 months at Toyota as an intern in the Latin American Business Relations Department. That's where I learned about Japanese business protocols and developed true fluency in the language. Takashi Nakamura spoke quickly in Japanese, his voice showing growing interest. What did he say now? He said he worked at Toyota for over 20 years before joining his current company. He wants to know exactly when I interned there and who my supervisor was. Jasmine replied in Japanese, providing names and dates. Nakamura's reaction was immediate. His eyes widened and he said something that clearly surprised her. Jasmine, what is it? He said that my supervisor at Toyota was Kazuo Yamamoto, who is his cousin, and that Kazuo mentioned several times an exceptional young American woman who had worked in the department. He remembers me because of the reports I wrote about business opportunities in the United States. The final piece of the puzzle was falling into place. It wasn't just competence. There was a network of professional connections Jasmine had built without even realizing it. Richard felt a mix of admiration and humility. Here was a young woman who had been invisible to him for months, yet had built an international reputation for excellence. Jasmine, he said, I'd like to apologize. How many months have you worked at this hotel? 8 months, sir. In 8 months, I've passed by you dozens of times in the halls and never truly saw you. I never asked about your background, your dreams, your talents. That says a lot about the kind of leader I've become. Mrs. Dorothy approached Richard, her eyes filled with the wisdom of years. Mr. Richard, don't blame yourself too much. Sometimes people go unnoticed, not out of malice, but because we're all chasing our own battles. What matters is recognizing when we find someone special and having the humility to learn from them. Takashi Nakamura stood and spoke directly to Jasmine for several minutes. The conversation seemed serious, almost intimate. Other executives joined the discussion, all speaking in Japanese. Richard waited anxiously for the translation. They want to make a different proposal than we imagined, Jasmine finally said. They don't just want to invest in your company. They want to create a joint venture, a shared business, to facilitate trade between the United States and Japan. You would be the president of the American operation, I would be the director of international relations, and they would provide not only capital, but also access to Asian markets. That's much bigger than I imagined. There's more. They want part of the profits to go toward a professional training program, specifically for people like me who have talent, but are in positions that don't reflect their qualifications. Richard looked at Mrs. Dorothy, who watched her granddaughter with evident pride. And you, Jasmine, what do you think about all this? She glanced at her grandmother, then at Richard, and finally at the Japanese investors. I'm scared, she admitted. But I'm also tired of wasting my potential out of fear. If you truly believe I can contribute, I accept the challenge. Takashi Nakamura smiled for the first time since arriving at the hotel. He said something in Japanese that made Jasmine blush slightly. What was it this time? He said he rarely meets people who combine technical competence with moral integrity, and that he believes our partnership will be very productive. For the next 2 hours, the details of the agreement were carefully refined. Jasmine translated not just the words, but also the cultural nuances that could lead to misunderstandings. Her understanding of both cultures was key to shaping an agreement that respected the expectations of both sides. When they finally shook hands to seal the deal, Richard felt like a transformed man. Not only had he saved his company, he discovered that true leadership meant recognizing and nurturing talent, no matter where it appeared. Mrs. Dorothy approached the two of them after the meeting. "You know this story isn't over yet, right? Now comes the hardest part. Working together every day, building trust, facing the challenges ahead." Richard nodded. "Mrs. Dorothy is right. Jasmine, I'd like to propose that we work side by side for the next 6 months. I need to learn about Asian markets and you need to fully understand our operations in the United States. It'll be an exchange of knowledge." "I accept," said Jasmine, "but on one condition." "What?" "I want us to immediately implement an internal program to identify hidden talent among our employees. People like me exist in every company, but they go unseen because no one asks about their qualifications or dreams." The months that followed proved the agreement went far beyond financial expectations. The joint venture became a model for how American and Japanese companies could collaborate while respecting cultural differences. Jasmine developed communication protocols that increased negotiation efficiency by 40%. Richard, in turn, learned to value every employee as an individual with unique potential. The talent identification program uncovered dozens of surprising stories. A janitor who was a trained engineer from Venezuela, a receptionist who spoke 6 languages, a security guard with an MBA who had lost his previous job due to the economic crisis. Mrs. Dorothy, her health stabilized thanks to the premium insurance plan Jasmine could now provide, became an informal consultant for the program, using her life experience to spot signs of untapped potential. 6 months after that fateful presentation, Richard was in his new office when Jasmine walked in with a report in hand. "The third quarter numbers are here," she said. "We exceeded projections by 22%. "Not bad for a girl who used to serve coffee," Richard teased. "Not bad for a businessman who learned to look beyond appearances," she shot back, smiling. They worked in harmony now, their skills perfectly complementing each other. Richard brought experience and knowledge of the American market. Jasmine brought international vision and cultural sensitivity. During a meeting with South Korean investors the following week, Richard watched Jasmine translate not just words, but intentions, contexts, and subtleties that made all the difference in negotiations. She had become indispensable, not just to him, but to the entire operation. "Jasmine," he said after the investors left, "sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Stephen hadn't disappeared that day. You probably would have given your presentation, secured the investment, and never discovered the talent right under your nose," she replied. "Sometimes bad things happen to force us to find better solutions." "You're right. Michael's betrayal hurt me deeply, but it taught me to value honesty above all, and it showed me that sometimes the best people are the ones we're not seeing." That afternoon, Richard received an unexpected call. It was Takashi Nakamura, calling directly from Japan. "Richard-san," he said in English, "I have a proposal. I'd like you and Jasmine to come to Japan next month. We want to show you our operations there and discuss an even greater expansion of our partnership." Richard looked at Jasmine, who was organizing documents on the table beside him. "Jasmine, would you like to go back to Japan? This time as a director, not an intern?" Her eyes sparkled with excitement. "That would be amazing. There's so much I can learn from them, and so much I can teach about our culture too." 3 weeks later, they were in Tokyo, touring the Japanese company's facilities. Jasmine served as an interpreter, but also as a cultural consultant, helping Richard navigate Japanese social protocols. During a formal dinner, Takashi Nakamura made a special toast. "Richard-san, Jasmine-san," he said in Japanese, which Jasmine translated simultaneously, "our partnership has proven that the best business happens when honest people work together, respecting their differences and celebrating their unique talents. You've taught us that true success comes from giving opportunities to the right people, no matter where they are working when we find them." Back in the United States, Richard and Jasmine implemented new policies at the company. Every employee now went through an annual review that included questions about education, language skills, and professional aspirations. The program revealed a wealth of hidden talent that completely transformed the organizational culture. The company not only grew financially, but became a model for valuing human potential. Mrs. Dorothy, now 72 and fully recovered, became a respected figure in the company. Her life wisdom and ability to see beyond appearances made her a valuable advisor to employees of all ages. "Grandma," Jasmine said one day as they dined together in the new apartment she had bought, "sometimes I think about how our lives changed that day at the hotel. My dear, our lives didn't change by chance. They changed because you had the courage to offer help when you saw someone in need, even knowing you might be rejected. And because you always kept your integrity, even when it would have been easier to pretend you didn't see the problems. And because Mr. Richard was humble enough to accept help from someone he didn't expect." Exactly. Pride and prejudice blind us to incredible opportunities. Humility and honesty open doors we didn't even know existed. A year after that life-changing presentation, Richard was preparing to retire gradually, passing more responsibilities to Jasmine. She had proven not only to be an excellent executive, but a natural leader. "Jasmine," he said during one of their weekly meetings, "there's something I want to discuss with you." "Of course, Richard. What is it?" "I'm considering transferring the company presidency to you within the next 2 years. You've proven you have not just the technical competence, but also the vision and integrity needed to lead." She fell silent for a moment, clearly moved. "Richard, a year ago I was serving coffee in meetings. Are you sure I'm ready for this?" "Jasmine, a year ago you were wasting your talent serving coffee, but you've always been ready for big responsibilities. I just wasn't prepared to recognize it." The transition happened gradually, with Richard mentoring Jasmine through all the complexities of business leadership. She, in turn, brought innovations he had never considered. The company developed partnerships not just in Japan but in South Korea, Taiwan, and Singapore. The talent identification program was licensed to other companies in the United States, creating a true revolution in how the country identified and developed human resources. 2 years later, during the ceremony inaugurating Jasmine as the new president of the company, Richard gave an emotional speech. 3 years ago, I was a businessman blinded by pride and prejudice. I nearly lost everything because I couldn't see the obvious. The best people aren't always where we expect to find them. Jasmine taught me that true leadership isn't about commanding, but about recognizing and nurturing human potential wherever it appears. Jasmine responded with words that showed her maturity and wisdom. Richard gave me an opportunity when I needed it most, but more importantly, he had the humility to learn from me just as I learned from him. Our journey proves that the best results come when different people work together with mutual respect and shared goals. The audience, made up of company employees, international investors, and representatives from other businesses, gave a standing ovation. Among them, Mrs. Dorothy watched with tears of pride in her eyes. After the ceremony, Richard met with Mrs. Dorothy in a quiet corner of the hall. "Mrs. Dorothy, I want to thank you again, not just for saving my mother all those years ago, but for raising the extraordinary woman your granddaughter has become." "Richard, your mother taught me something that night at the hospital. Sometimes our mission in life is simply to be in the right place, at the right time, with the right skills to help someone. Jasmine learned that from me and you learned it from her. That's how the world becomes a better place. One person helping another, recognizing the value in every human being." Today, 5 years after that fateful presentation, Jasmine and Richard's company is considered an international model for building cultural bridges in business. They've developed their own method of intercultural communication, now studied in universities worldwide. Richard, fully retired but still serving as an advisor, dedicates his time to speaking about mindful leadership and talent recognition. Mrs. Dorothy, now 77, is writing her memoirs with Jasmine's help, documenting the life lessons she learned over decades of caring for others. Their story proves that sometimes the greatest opportunities arise from the most desperate moments, and that true success comes from our ability to look beyond appearances and recognize the extraordinary potential in ordinary people. The talent identification program they created has transformed the lives of over 1,000 employees across dozens of US companies. Each of these stories is a reminder that it takes just one person with the courage to offer an opportunity to change entire lives. Richard often says in his speeches, "I thought I was saving my company that day. In truth, it was my company that saved me," teaching me that true leadership begins with humility and respect for human potential. Jasmine, in turn, always ends her international presentations with the same reflection. Every person we meet has a story, a talent, a dream. Our responsibility as leaders is to create spaces where those stories can flourish and those talents can shine. Their partnership remains strong, built on mutual respect and the understanding that the best results come when different people work together, each contributing their unique strengths toward shared goals. And whenever Richard walks through the company halls, he greets every employee by name, asks about their families and their dreams. He learned that true leadership isn't about commanding from above, but about walking side by side with people, recognizing in each one the potential to transform not only their own lives, but also the world around them. The end. What an inspiring story, don't you think? Tell us what you thought about Richard's transformation and Jasmine's courage. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and comment on which part moved you the most.